The moment the Queen puts her signature on this document, it becomes law. It will be witnessed later. The Constitution is now home. A fanfare in the background, as you can hear.
In 1976, Walter Cool, a member of Parliament from Alberta, wrote a letter to René Lévesque, Premier-elect of Quebec, explaining that Quebec does not need to seek a formal separation because the province has been completely independent and sovereign since December 11, 1931, just like every other province. How can you be divorced when you have never been married? In 1982, Pierre Elliott Trudeau initiated the grand deception that is called the Constitution Act of Canada, also known as the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. An illusion, as we will see, which many people strongly believe to be factual truth. Trudeau is said to have patriated, which means to transfer legislation to an autonomous country from its previous mother country, the defunct and meaningless BNA Act 1867 to Canada. Why did he only bring a photocopy? Why does the original BNA Act 1867 still reside in the parliamentary archives of Great Britain? Trudeau urged all provinces to ratify, which means to give formal consent to make something official, the document, so that Canadians could enjoy their new constitution as soon as possible. Did all the provinces sign? Was it ever ratified? Section 58 of the Canada Act, 1982, states that this act would only come into force by proclamation issued by the Queen or the Governor-General, and only if the conditions of Section 59 were met. Section 59 is equally important to comprehend. Subsection 1, Paragraph 23, 1. A shall come into force in respect of Quebec on a day to be fixed by proclamation issued by the Queen or the Governor-General under the Great Seal of Canada. Subsection 2. A proclamation under subsection 1 shall be issued only where authorized by the Legislative Assembly or Government of Quebec. Subsection 3. This section may be repealed on the day paragraph 23, 1. A comes into force in respect of Quebec and this act amended and renumbered consequentially upon the repeal of this section, by proclamation issued by the Queen or the Governor-General under the Great Seal of Canada. The key phrase here is, in respect of Quebec. Section 23. Minority language educational rights. Citizens of Canada, whose first language learned and still understood is that of the English or French linguistic minority population, have the right to have their children receive primary and secondary school instruction in that language in that province. Recall Section 59, subsection 3, in respect of Quebec. This section may be repealed on the day paragraph 23, 1. A comes into force in respect of Quebec and this act amended and renumbered consequentially upon the repeal of this section, by proclamation issued by the Queen or the Governor-General under the Great Seal of Canada. This means that only Quebec would lose their educational right in the French language. What were the steps to ratify and enact the Canada Act, 1982? 1. All provinces would need to sign Schedule B of the Act, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. 2. Quebec would need to authorize a proclamation to enact Section 23, 1A of the Act. 3. Section 23, 1A would be enacted through a proclamation. 4. Section 59, 3 would be enacted through a proclamation to repeal Section 59 and renumber the Act. 5. Section 58 would be enacted through a proclamation to pass the Act. A total of 3 proclamations were needed to pass the act. Which of these steps have been completed? None. But what about the proclamation from 1982? From the Royal Proclamation, 1982. Now know you that we, by and with the advice our Privy Council for Canada, do by this our proclamation declare that the Constitution Act 1982 shall, subject to Section 59 thereof, come into force. Recall, subject to Section 59 means 2 proclamations must be made before the final proclamation to pass the Act, Section 58, could be made. This Royal Proclamation, 1982, is only a proclamation stating that there will be a proclamation in the future. Nothing was passed. Nothing was enacted. There is no Constitution. There is no Charter of Rights and Freedoms. The Royal Proclamation 1983 had nothing to do with the passing of the Canada Act 1982. This act simply converted the status of Aboriginal people from sovereigns to persons. Even the 1987 Meech Lake Accord and the 1992 Charlottetown Accord failed to enact the Canada Act 1982, also known as the Constitution Act 1982. Reminder: everything since December 11th, 1931 has been illegitimate, null and void. Since the fraud has obviously continued, why would Quebec not speak up and call it out? Maybe the over $12 billion in equalization payments that Quebec has received on average each year has played a role. Let's take a look at the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Section 1. The Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms guarantees the rights and freedoms set out in its subject only to such reasonable limits prescribed by law as can be demonstrably justified in a free and democratic society. This gives the government the option to ignore the Charter, and it is why the courts often side with the government. Section 7. Everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of the person, and the right not to be deprived thereof except in accordance with the principles of fundamental justice. What is a person? Section 32. This charter applies to the Parliament and Government of Canada, and to the legislature and government of each province. Does the charter apply to the living men and women, or only to persons? A charter is a reservation of a ship, or a written grant, by which a corporation is founded and its rights and privileges are defined. A ship needs to be chartered to land it and reflag it. A person is a legal fiction. A corporation is also a legal fiction, but not a person. The charter was meant to create a ship at sea, which was intended to bring maritime law onto the land. Through persons, the living men and women would be brought under maritime law jurisdiction. This is why all provinces needed to sign the charter. A charter differs from a constitution in this that the former is granted by a foreign government, while the latter is established by the people themselves